They fined my mountain property for dirt I hadn't even moved yet. By sunset, my equipment was gone, and the only road home was suddenly private. The first sign something was wrong wasn't a letter, it was the sound of a diesel engine idling where it didn't belong. I stepped onto the gravel shoulder of the mountain access road and watched a flatbed truck ease away with my rented grader chained down, amber lights still flashing through the trees. The driver didn't argue. He just pointed to a printed authorization taped to his clipboard and said HOA order. Then he drove off, leaving fresh tire ruts in the dirt I'd been cited for touching. This road mattered. It was the only way up to the property, a narrow ribbon cut into the slope years before I bought the land. On one side, a drop into pine and rock. On the other, a retaining wall I was supposed to repair once grading began. I stood there long enough to hear the quiet settle back in, then noticed something new at the bend near the gate, a temporary barricade with orange mesh and a sign zip-tied crookedly across it. Road closed, HOA authorization required. I walked the rest of the way up on foot. At the clearing, the mansion shell sat unfinished but intact, scaffolding still hugging the stone facade. A yellow notice was stapled to a plywood post near the driveway, flapping in the wind. It cited unauthorized grading activity and listed escalating fines by date. The fines jumped fast, daily penalties, then a line that said lien initiated. No photos, no measurements, just a claim. Down by the gate, a small black dome camera blinked red as I passed it again. I remembered when it went in, sold as a security improvement at the last HOA meeting. At the time, no one objected. It was mounted high enough to see every vehicle that came and went, including mine. The next escalation didn't come from the mailbox, it came from steel. 2 mornings later, I drove up before sunrise to find a heavy chain looped through the gate handles, padlock still clean and new. A backhoe sat on the turnout beyond it, parked diagonally to block the shoulder. Someone had driven stakes into the dirt and stretched caution tape across the slope, funneling any traffic into a dead stop. I killed the engine and got out. The cooled air smelled like cut brush and diesel fuel. A pickup rolled in behind me, HOA logo on the door. The board's secretary stepped out, phone already raised like she was recording. She didn't shout, she didn't threaten, she just read from her screen. Emergency action, unsafe grading, access restricted. Then she pointed to the chain and said, "We're preventing damage." It felt like a win for them. They controlled the road. My equipment was gone. The fines were ticking. From the turn, I could see another contractor's truck idle, then reverse and leave. No access meant no work. No work meant the fines would keep compounding until the lien stuck. That afternoon, I walked the perimeter instead of driving it. I traced the road on foot from the lower junction up to the gate, noting the old culverts, the patched asphalt, the places where the shoulder widened enough for 2 vehicles to pass. I paused where the camera's field of view ended and began again, then followed it back down. Every few steps, the red light blinked. It was recording everything, who arrived, who left, and when. The next visual came from the valley below. From a neighbor's deck across the ravine, I could see the gate clearly. A board member's SUV rolled up midday, stopped, and the driver got out. The chain came off, the gate opened, the SUV went through. 10 minutes later, the gate closed again, chain back in place. No construction, no inspection, just access, for them. That night, rain hit the mountain hard. Water sheeted across the road surface, finding the exact spots the fines claimed were freshly graded. By morning, runoff had carved shallow channels through old gravel repairs. Nothing new, nothing caused by me. I filmed it from 3 angles as the water moved, the camera timestamp ticking steadily in the corner of the frame. By the end of the week, a new notice appeared, this one laminated. Demolition authorization pending if conditions weren't stabilized. A contractor's trailer showed up near the gate, parked squarely on the shoulder, its stabilizers pressed into the dirt. Men in hard hats walked the road, pointing, stepping off distances, then leaving without speaking to me. They had the road, they had the narrative, and now they were setting the stage to claim an emergency they could fix. But the cameras they installed were still blinking. If the road was truly theirs, why were they the only ones using it? And why were their own cameras watching?
They called it an emergency, but emergencies don't wait for permission. This one waited until the board arrived. The next morning, the barricade changed again. The orange mesh was gone, replaced by a solid steel sawhorse anchored into the gravel with rebar pins. Someone had spray-painted arrows on the road surface, pointing traffic away from the gate and into a narrow turnout barely wide enough for a pickup. A generator hummed beside a temporary light tower, its beam trained directly at the mansion's driveway like a spotlight. I parked at the lower junction and walked up. As I rounded the bend, a portable signboard flickered to life. Unsafe conditions, no entry. The letters cycled slowly, deliberate, like they wanted the message recorded. I raised my phone and filmed from a distance, panning across the road surface, the intact culverts, the light tower casting harsh shadows across undisturbed gravel. 2 HOA board members stood near the gate, clipboards in hand, boots clean, no mud, no measuring tools, no safety cones beyond the showpieces. They didn't notice me at first. They were focused on the camera. One of them stepped directly beneath the dome, looked up, and gestured toward the slope as if explaining something to an invisible audience. The other opened the gate again. A third vehicle, another board member, pulled through and parked near the driveway. Doors opened and closed, engines shut off. The gate closed behind them. I stayed where I was and kept filming. The red light blinked steadily. After 20 minutes, they came back down, the same sequence in reverse. Gate open, vehicles out, gate closed, chain secured. No posted inspection report, no county truck, no warming tape moved. The signboard went dark. An hour later, the HOA emailed the community. Emergency stabilization declared. The message claimed board members had observed active soil displacement and restricted access to prevent imminent damage. It included a single photo, cropped tight on a muddy patch near the shoulder. No timestamp visible, no context. That afternoon, a demolition subcontractor arrived. He didn't get far. His lowboy trailer couldn't clear the sawhorse, and when he tried to angle around it, the tires sank into the soft turnout dirt left exposed by last night's rain. The trailer leaned just enough for him to stop. He climbed down, walked the road, kicked at the gravel, and shook his head. I filmed from the tree line as he took photos of his own, wide shots showing intact pavement, the barricade placement, and the slope untouched. "Who authorized this?" he asked to no one in particular. Then he turned around and left. By evening, the HOA escalated again. A crew arrived with a skid steer and began stacking concrete barriers along the road edge, narrowing the lane to a single file. They worked fast, lights blazing, engines loud enough to echo off the canyon walls. I recorded the entire process from 2 vantage points, one above, showing barrier placement, one below, showing the camera dome capturing it all. At one point, a board member walked past the camera and pointed down the slope, speaking animatedly. Another board member nodded, then stepped directly onto the graded shoulder, compressing wet dirt with her boot. It was subtle, but visible. The soil changed under her weight. She stepped back, looked up at the camera, and kept talking. That was the moment I realized the trap didn't need words. The next morning, I hiked the ridge opposite the road. From there, I could see the entire access route and the gate in one frame. I set up a long lens shot and waited. Midday, 2 HOA vehicles arrived again. The gate opened, they entered. 10 minutes later, they exited. Same routine, same emergency. When the county inspector finally showed up, late afternoon, unannounced, he stopped at the barricade and called the number posted on the sign. No answer. He walked the road himself, kneeling to inspect the shoulder, checking culverts, photographing drainage paths. He glanced up at the camera, then back down at his clipboard. After 40 minutes, he left without crossing the gate. That evening, a new notice appeared on the HOA portal. Demolition scheduled pending access clearance. The language was careful. It didn't say county approved, it said pending. I spent the night syncing footage. Every gate opening, every board vehicle entry, every minute they were inside while access was denied to everyone else. The camera timestamps matched my external footage frame for frame. The access logs, downloaded quietly from the HOA's own system, showed manual overrides during restricted hours. The emergency they declared only existed when they were present. At dawn, I walked the road one last time before the next escalation. The barriers were still there. The signboard flickered back on. But the dirt they claimed was unstable looked exactly like it always had, except for a few fresh boot prints leading directly beneath the camera. I stopped, framed the shot, and held it steady. Mini Rehut. If the emergency was real, why did it only happen when the board unlocked the gate? And who was the camera really recording for?
They said the land was unstable and set a demolition clock, but the only fresh marks on that road led straight back to them. The morning demolition was supposed to begin. The mountain woke under low fog. It pressed down on the access road, softening the edges of the barricades and muting the generator's hum. I parked where the pavement ended and walked the last stretch, boots crunching lightly on gravel that hadn't moved overnight. The signboard flashed "No entry" again, cycling slower than before, like it was running low on power. A new piece of theater waited at the gate, red stakes hammered into the shoulder, each one tied with survey tape that snapped in the wind. Someone had spray-painted numbers on the asphalt, rough, hurried, not aligned with any real survey marks. I filmed close-ups of the paint bleeding into cracks that had been there for years, then widened out to show the intact culvert mouths and the unbroken edge of the pavement. 2 trucks arrived from opposite directions within minutes. One carried demolition equipment. The other was an HOA-branded pickup with a temporary amber beacon on the roof. They stopped short of the barricade. The drivers talked. Phones came out. Then the HOA truck rolled forward, the board member stepping out to unlock the gate, again. The camera blinked red. As the gate swung open, the demolition driver started to follow. I stepped into the frame, not blocking, just visible, and raised my phone. The HOA member froze, glanced at the camera, and closed the gate again. The chain clanged. The demolition truck idled, then shut off. From the tree line, I caught the entire exchange in one wide shot, the open gate, the hesitation, the retreat. Then the board member walked back up the road alone, boots landing deliberately on the softest part of the shoulder. Each step left a print. He stopped, turned, and pointed at the impressions he'd just made. "See," he said to the other board member, loud enough for the microphone to catch. "Active displacement." I didn't argue. I zoomed. The fog lifted by late morning, revealing something the board hadn't accounted for. From above the slope, you could see the pattern clearly. Old erosion lines, uniform and weathered, running down slope away from the road, and superimposed over them, fresh, shallow boot prints clustered in one place, the only new disturbance on the entire stretch. The county inspector returned just after noon. This time, he parked below the junction and walked up with a measuring wheel, stopping every few yards to check grades. I filmed from behind as he crouched, pressed a screwdriver into the shoulder, and checked compaction. He looked at the survey stakes, frowned, and took photos from multiple angles, making sure the gate and camera were visible in each frame. When the HOA member tried to join him, the inspector held up a hand and kept working. No raised voices, no confrontation, just a quiet line drawn on the gravel. The inspector asked one question before leaving. Who accessed this road during the restriction period? No one answered. By mid-afternoon, the HOA escalated digitally. A community alert went out claiming the inspector had confirmed instability and that demolition was delayed only due to contractor availability. The message included another cropped photo, this time of a muddy patch near the barricade.
I compared it to my footage, same spot, same angle, taken right after the board member walked it. I spent the next hours building the visual record, side-by-side clips, the gate opening during restricted hours, the board vehicles entering, the same boots creating the only fresh impressions, the camera timestamps aligning with my long lens shots from across the ravine. I overlaid the county easement map, not zoomed, not annotated, just the full parcel view showing the access road labeled as shared, cutting across multiple lots, including mine. At dusk, a final escalation arrived on wheels. Concrete barriers were moved again, this time narrowing the road to the edge of the pavement. A forklift nudged one barrier too far, cracking the asphalt lip. The operator stopped, backed up, and tried to hide the damage by sweeping gravel over it. I filmed the crack before and after, capturing the fresh edge and the dust still settling. That crack mattered. It wasn't mine, it wasn't from grading, it happened during the emergency. I uploaded nothing, I sent nothing, I just waited. That night, the HOA portal updated once more. Emergency access authorized for board use only. The wording was new, the implication was worse. Before sunrise, I walked the road again. Dew highlighted every footprint. The only ones near the shoulder matched the same tread pattern from the day before. I followed them with my camera until they disappeared beneath the dome lens. Then I held the shot, steady, long enough for the red light to blink twice. This was the moment viewers usually ask for the ending, the ruling, the reversal. But the truth is, cases like this don't turn on speeches, they turn on records that already exist. If you want to see how this access road case actually flips, using nothing but the HOA's own cameras and logs, subscribe so you don't miss the next part. As the sun cleared the ridge, a county truck appeared at the lower junction and stopped. The driver didn't get out right away. He just sat there, looking up the road at the barricades, the camera, and the gate that kept opening for the same people. Mini rehook. When the evidence shows the emergency was created by the people enforcing it, who really loses control next, the road or the board?
They doubled down on control and rewrote the rules overnight. What they didn't change was the land itself. The county truck stayed at the junction longer than expected. The driver finally stepped out, stretched, and leaned against the door while scanning the road with a practiced eye. He didn't cross the barricade. Instead, he raised binoculars and traced the line of concrete barriers, the narrowed lane, the cracked asphalt lip I'd filmed the night before. Then he took photos, wide, patient shots that told a story without commentary, and drove off. By mid-morning, the HOA reacted. A crew arrived with a tablet and a printer, posting a new laminated notice over the old one. The heading was bolder now. Temporary HOA access control, safety zone. Below it, smaller text cited authority under community rules. No county seal, no permit number, just confidence. They reinforced the gate next, swapping the clean padlock for a heavier one and adding a second chain looped lower, closer to the ground. The camera dome was adjusted too, tilted a few degrees downward, widening its view of the shoulder. I filmed the adjustment from the ridge, zoomed in enough to see the board member's reflection warp across the lens. The afternoon escalation came with machinery, not demolition yet, but a compactor. The operator ran it back and forth along the shoulder in short passes, compressing the same patch the board member had walked earlier. Each pass smoothed the boot prints into a uniform surface. I caught the sequence from 3 angles, before, during, and after. The compactor never crossed into my parcel. It stayed on the road edge. That detail mattered. When the machine shut down, a board member pointed to the freshly compacted strip and spoke toward the camera again, gesturing as if explaining remediation. The implication was clear. We fixed what you broke. Except I hadn't touched it. Late that day, I pulled the county's public GIS map onto my screen and printed it full scale. Not the zoomed-in version with labels turned off, the complete sheet, showing parcel lines, easement shading, and road designation.
I walked the road again with the map in frame, lining up physical landmarks, culvert mouths, rock outcrops, fence corners, with the boundaries printed on paper. The access road sat squarely within a shared easement corridor, crossing multiple lots. The gate, installed well inside it. As if on cue, another HOA vehicle arrived. Same routine, unlock, enter, exit, lock. But this time, something changed. The driver hesitated at the gate, looked up at the camera, and then down at the chain. He didn't step onto the shoulder. He stayed on the asphalt.
The next morning brought rain again, harder this time. Water streamed off the slope and ran along the compacted strip, pooling briefly before draining through the culvert as designed. I filmed the flow continuously, holding the shot until the rain eased. No sloughing, no collapse, just drainage doing what it had always done. When the rain stopped, the county truck returned, this time with 2 people. They walked the road together, one taking notes, the other photographing. At the gate, they stopped. One pointed at the camera dome, the other nodded and took a photo that included it, the chain, and the easement corridor beyond. They didn't unlock the gate. Instead, they walked the outside edge, staying within the easement boundary, stepping around barriers where they could. When they reached the compacted strip, one knelt and pressed a pen into the surface, testing resistance. He stood, shook his head, and said something I couldn't hear. The other took more photos. By noon, the portal lit up with comments, not shouting, questions. Why could board vehicles pass but residents couldn't? Why was the road labeled shared on county maps? Why had the camera angle changed? The HOA responded once, then went silent. The final escalation of the day was quiet but telling. The demolition subcontractor's trailer disappeared from the turnout. No announcement, no explanation, just gone. As the light faded, I walked to the gate one last time. The heavy padlock was still there, the second chain still looped low, the camera still blinked red. I held the GIS map up beside the gate, aligning the printed easement line with the physical road, then lowered it and filmed the empty lane stretching uphill. They could lock the gate, they could narrow the road, they could rewrite notices, but they couldn't move the easement. When the map proves the road was never theirs to control, what happens when the county decides who unlocks that gate next?
They prepared for demolition. The county prepared for something else. The change came without an announcement. At first light, the gate was still chained, the signboard still blinking, the camera still watching. But the road felt different, quiet in a way that wasn't staged. No generators, no crew trucks warming up. Just wind moving through the pines and water dripping from the culvert mouths after the night's mist. At 8:17 a.m., the first county vehicle arrived and parked at the junction. It didn't turn around, it stayed. 10 minutes later, a second truck pulled in behind it, then a third. None crossed the barricade. All of them had dash cams running. From the ridge, I filmed the lineup. A county staffer walked up to the gate alone, clipboard tucked under one arm. He didn't touch the chain. He photographed it, close enough to show the padlock brand, wide enough to include the camera dome overhead. Then he stepped back and waited. The HOA arrived late. 2 board vehicles came up the road together, stopped short of the junction, and idled. The drivers talked through open windows. Then one got out and walked toward the gate with a key ring in hand. He froze when he saw the county staffer waiting there. They spoke briefly, no gestures, no raised voices, just a nod, then another. The board member unlocked the gate and stepped aside. The county official didn't go through. Instead, he walked around the barricade, staying within the easement corridor, and proceeded uphill on foot. A second county official followed, then a third. Each carried a camera. They photographed the shoulder, the compacted strip, the culverts, the cracked asphalt lip. One measured the width of the narrowed lane between barriers. Another filmed the camera dome itself, panning to capture its field of view,
and the blinking status light. When they reached the mansion driveway, they stopped. No demolition equipment was present, no county permit posted, no safety fencing installed beyond the HOA's temporary setup. One official checked a tablet, then looked back down the road toward the gate. At the gate, the HOA vehicles remained parked, engines off now. The board members stood together, watching. The officials returned the way they came, still on foot. At the gate, one turned to the board member who'd unlocked it and asked a single question that carried across the gravel. Who authorized selective access on a shared easement? There was a pause. Then, the board. The official nodded, wrote something down, and thanked him.
By noon, the barricades began to move, but not the way the HOA had planned. A county crew arrived with their own equipment and started repositioning the concrete barriers away from the asphalt edge, restoring the lane to its original width. They didn't remove the gate. They didn't touch the camera. They simply made the road passable again. Every movement was filmed, from above, from below, from the county dash cams. The HOA protested quietly, standing near the signboard as it was powered down. One board member pointed at the shoulder, then at the laminated notice. A county supervisor listened, nodded, and then gestured toward the printed GIS map clipped to his folder. He traced the easement line with his finger and said something short and final. Mid-afternoon, the official notice posted, not on the HOA portal, but on the county's. Temporary cease of HOA access controls pending review. It cited shared easement interference and unauthorized restriction of access. It did not accuse, it did not threaten, it simply stopped the action. The gate remained unlocked for the rest of the day. Residents began to pass through again, slowly, cautiously. Some filmed, some waved at the camera dome as they went by. No one touched the shoulder, no one argued. The road did what roads do. It carried traffic. The final escalation wasn't loud. It was administrative, but visible. A county notice appeared on the gate itself, taped beneath the HOA sign. It required the camera footage and access logs to be preserved without alteration. The red light blinked as if acknowledging the order. By evening, the HOA portal updated with a brief message. Demolition deferred. No explanation. Comments were disabled. I walked the road at sunset, filming the length of it uninterrupted for the first time in days. The cracked asphalt lip was still there. The compacted strip was still smooth. The camera still watched. But the gate, once the symbol of control, hung open, chain slack, padlock dangling uselessly from its loop. This wasn't the end. There would be hearings, there would be findings, there would be consequences measured in citations and policy changes, not speeches. But the outcome everyone could see was already clear. They tried to enforce an emergency by controlling a road they never owned. The proof came from their own access logs, their own cameras, and a map they never bothered to read. And once the county stepped onto that easement, the story stopped being theirs to tell. If the gate opening ended the emergency, what happens next when the court reviews who created it and who pays for trying? The gate was open, but the case was just beginning. Because once evidence exists, it doesn't blink or look away. The hearing didn't start with arguments. It started with a screen. In a quiet county room, a projector threw the access road onto the wall. Wide-angle footage pulled directly from the HOA's own camera system. No edits, no narration, just timestamps ticking in the corner as vehicles approached, gates opened, and chains were replaced. The room stayed silent while the sequence played twice. The judge didn't interrupt, neither did the board. Next came the logs, a simple table: date, time, access granted, access denied. The pattern was unmistakable. During the declared restriction window, access occurred repeatedly, always manual overrides, always the same key fob IDs, always tied to board members' vehicles.
The denial entries followed immediately after, blocking everyone else. Then the county easement map went up. Full parcel view, no highlights, no arrows, just boundaries and shading. The access road ran cleanly through the shared corridor, cutting across lots like a line no rule could erase. The gate sat inside it. The barricades narrowed it. The selective access policy sat nowhere because it wasn't allowed to exist there. The HOA's counsel tried once to reframe it as safety discretion. The judge held up a hand and asked a single question: who physically altered the road surface during the restriction period? The answer came from video: boots on wet soil, a compactor rolling over the shoulder, concrete barriers nudged into asphalt, a forklift cracking the pavement edge. Each clip ended with a timestamp. Each timestamp matched a log entry. Each log entry matched a board vehicle. The room stayed quiet. The ruling didn't use dramatic language. It didn't need to. The lien was dissolved because the underlying fines were tied to conditions created during unauthorized access. The demolition authorization was voided because no county permit had ever been issued and because the claimed emergency was not independently verified. The HOA was sanctioned not for malice, but for trespass and interference with a shared easement. Access was ordered restored immediately with monitoring, and the cameras, they were ordered to remain unchanged for 30 days. That detail mattered more than it sounded like, because when the board returned to the mountain that afternoon, they knew the record was still rolling. They unlocked the gate slowly. They didn't touch the shoulder. They didn't gesture toward the slope. They didn't speak toward the lens. They just drove through and left it open behind them. Residents noticed. Contractors noticed. The road returned to what it had always been, a way through, not a lever of control.
Weeks later, the physical changes were subtle but visible. The barricades were gone. The cracked asphalt was patched, this time with a county work order posted nearby. The survey stakes disappeared. The laminated notices faded in the sun, then vanished. The camera dome stayed, but no one adjusted it anymore. The HOA issued a policy update. Short, careful. It acknowledged shared easements and clarified that emergency actions required county coordination. There was no apology. There didn't need to be one. The record already said everything. The last visual I filmed wasn't dramatic. It was the access road at dusk. Cars passing in both directions without stopping. Headlights traced the curve. Taillights vanished into the trees. The gate stood open, chain coiled neatly against the post. Cases like this don't end with cheering. They end with quiet compliance. And that's the point. When power is exercised without authority, it leaves fingerprints. When those fingerprints are caught on camera, logged by systems and fixed to a map, the story stops being about who's loudest. It becomes about what's provable. If you want more real HOA cases where the win comes from evidence, not outrage, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. These outcomes are never accidental, and they're never as simple as they look. I walked the road one final time before putting the camera away. The shoulder was firm, the culverts clear, the pavement intact. No fresh prints, no barriers, no signs trying to rewrite reality. Just a shared road doing its job, and a record that would always remember who tried to claim it and who couldn't.